Hi. Let me adjust this a little bit here. I've been trapped inside for the last, I don't know, 3 days, 4 days. It's been like an ice storm here the last, I don't know, since Friday. Got off work early, and then today got canceled. And then with MLK Day yesterday, I've had a nice long weekend. But I also have been getting a little bit of cabin fever. I've been a little isolated. It's really cold. The roads are like black sheets of ice. People don't know how to drive. I know how to drive in ice. Do you guys feel this way? Like, I know how to drive just fine in icy conditions. I don't even have snow tires, and I have full 100% confidence in my abilities. It's other people. I went down to the store and it was like the apocalypse was happening. It's like the first time these idiots had ever seen snow in their life. If you live in the Pacific Northwest, you know what I'm talking about. Or maybe you don't. Maybe you're one of those morons who have no idea how to drive in icy conditions. People in the Midwest, they see conditions like this and they laugh. They're ready for it and they know what they're doing. But here in the Pacific Northwest, people do not know how to drive. And I don't know if it's the influx of Californians that flock their way up here and they're used to sunny weather and they see a little bit of rain or snow and they panic. Those of us who actually grew up here in this area, we know how to drive in snow and rain, but there's this influx of newbies that live here that just have no fucking idea how to drive their cars. I mean, even in dry weather, they don't know how to drive. So imagine what a little ice and snow does to these morons. Anyway, I drive fine, but I stay off the roads because the other people are so fucking dense, man. So I've been feeling isolated, and it's really cold. I'm wearing this, even though it's nice and warm in my house. But just to carry the theme of the coldness outside, I'm going to wear this. And also to further carry the theme, I thought, why not talk about the thing today? Because I've been wanting to do this for a while anyway, and I'm feeling that sense of isolation and cabin fever, which is what the thing is about, really. It's about isolation and paranoia, and thankfully I'm not feeling paranoid, but the isolation is definitely there. And if I wanted to feel paranoid, I just go get stoned. So I do have that option. And maybe I've done that in the last few days. You'll never know, will you? Actually, I probably just gave myself away. But I'm going to talk about the thing. And I know there's nothing that I can offer to people about this movie that hasn't already been offered a million other times on YouTube. This has become one of the most popular movies of all time amongst all kinds of different film buffs. And all I can do is offer my personal journey and story with this movie. And that's unique. But other than that, I can't offer anything. So this isn't going to be a super sprawling, lengthy video. I hate doing videos where I feel like there's a million other videos that are talking about the same thing. I just think it's boring. You're not offering the world anything by just talking about things that are talked about a million times before. But I will talk about my connection with this movie. And there's really not a lot to show. I have like 4 or 5 different versions of this. In my opinion, there's never been like a great comprehensive box set type physical release for this. Like, yes, they've released different versions with different covers but when it comes down to it, it's about the movie for me. And to this day, this is the best version of this movie I think you can get. This is the US Blu-ray. This came out, I don't know, a decade or so ago. I don't even know. What year did this come out? We all know the movie came out in 1982. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when did this particular physical release manifest itself? I don't know. I don't see a year. But anyway, I feel like this came out like a decade or so ago. The Thing. I- will talk about the physical part first. This cover, I don't know. This is one of the lamest covers. I've seen some really cool covers of this, and I'll get to something regarding covers and artwork about the thing. That's really cool. I have a book that covers that. But I like this version because it's got all the special features, like every special feature that's ever been blasted out for this movie. It's all compiled on this Blu-ray. In fact, this came out on 4K a few years ago, and I have that. It's worth having because of the movie. It looks phenomenal, especially if you have an OLED TV and you have Dolby Vision, which I have. I've talked about this before in the past, but people, if you love movies, you need to have Dolby Vision. You need to have an OLED screen. I have a Sony Bravia OLED screen. It's a Sony A80J OLED. And it's one of the best purchases I've ever made in my life. It's a beautiful TV. I can't imagine watching any movie on any other TV than this TV. I am completely sold on OLEDs from here on out. And the Bravia is great. You know, Sony's technology just never falters. I'm not trying to sound like a fanboy, and I've tried all kinds of different products, but Sony products are more expensive, yes, but they are absolutely worth it. To me, they are the Apple of TVs. You know, I use Apple equipment. I use Apple computers and phones. Are they more expensive? Yes, but they last. That's the reason they're expensive. It's a better product. And by the way, you guys out there who use Androids, who think your Androids are better than iPhones, stop fooling yourself. That's a different conversation. But now that I've dropped that bomb, now people are Android users are going to be scurrying around like fucking cockroaches now. They're furiously typing on their keyboards, yelling at me. But it's the truth, okay? Sometimes things are just true. Your Androids are shit compared to iPhones, and it's the same with computers. I cannot believe people still buy Windows machines in 2024. It is fucking hilarious to me. Anyway, OLED, Dolby Vision, 4K the thing. Pick it up for the movie itself. But if you want all the special features, you want to turn to this Blu-ray. I'm going to stop showing this cover because this cover annoys me. This, when you pull it out of its slipcase, this is the cover. This is the original cover of the thing. This is the first artwork I remember seeing. I have an original poster for this that I got at my video store back in the 80s. I still have it. And yes, I have it framed in all of its glory. And this is the cover. I can't think of the thing with any other cover than this. This is the greatest cover. This was what you saw in the newspaper ads when you back in the 80s when you were trying to decide which movie you wanted to see and you're checking for times. This is the image you saw in the paper. This is the thing. If you grew up in the 80s and you saw the thing then, this is what you remember. This is how you know it. This image right here. And all the special features you get. It's a 2K scan. If you have a good upscaling machine, Blu-rays look fine. They look great. 4Ks look amazing, but 2Ks it doesn't take like for me. I watch all my Blu-rays on either my PlayStation 5 or my Xbox Series X, and they both look fine. They both upscale very well. Blu-rays can look just fine. They don't look as good as a 4K, but it's pretty close, man. Only the most pedantic, pain in the ass cinephiles will notice differences. You know, it's a great experience if you buy the right equipment. This doesn't matter so much, in my opinion. I mean, it does, but if you have the right equipment, you can make things look good. You get let's see. You get the commentary with Dean Cundey. You get the commentary with John Carpenter and Kurt Russell, which is absolutely worth it. You do get those on the 4K release, by the way. But the commentary with Carpenter and Russell is brilliant. It's really funny, great senses of humor. They mainly just laugh watching this because this movie is so intense. You sit back and kind of laugh. I mean, it's so intense. Teaser trailers, new interviews with the cast and crew. Tear takes shape. That's like the feature length documentary they made. So anyway, let's see. Making of the thing, outtakes, everything is compiled here on this Blu-ray, not the 4K. Why that was, I don't know. It's disappointing. But enough about the physical release. I will tell you about my experience with this movie. This movie came out, I still remember to the day, June of 1982. Now picture this, and this I have very, very intense memories of this. I turned 10 that month, June of 1982. I turned 10 years old, and I'm dating myself, but whatever, who cares? And my parents were and are very liberal in their way. I don't mean, I mean politically they are, but they're liberal in the way of how they disperse art to their children. They were very smart about it. They sat us down and they said, look, we're going to let you experience these things like movies like The Thing, but you have to understand this is fake. This is not real. This is a fantasy. This is a story. Some kids get it, some kids don't. My two siblings were a little more sensitive to this stuff growing up, but I loved this stuff when I was a kid. I loved fantasy. I loved horror from a very young age. I loved science fiction. I was able to differentiate reality from fantasy. You know, it was easy for me. I could watch movies like this when I was a kid, and it didn't affect me. I didn't have bad dreams, but I was fascinated with it. I talked about this a little bit in The Exorcist. You have to do these things on a case by case basis. If your child or your young one is upset by this kind of stuff when they're a kid, you don't let them watch it. It's pretty simple. Like my brother and sister didn't get to watch stuff like this when they were kids. It freaked them out. But my parents let me watch this stuff because I loved it. It didn't affect me in a negative way, in an adverse way. It affected me positively. If anything, it inspired me to become a writer, which I've been for a long time. It's connections to this movie when I was a kid that make me do these videos now. So I saw this movie in the theater for my 10th birthday in June of 1982. Now get this. We defaulted to this movie. This wasn't the movie that we had planned to see that day. We went to the movie theater to see E.T. Now wrap your mind around this, okay? Within 2 weeks, in a 2 week period in June of 1982, E.T. came out, Blade Runner came out, and The Thing came out. All within 2 weeks. Maybe the same week. I feel like E.T. came out a little bit before that. Maybe it was 3 weeks. I don't know. But they all came out within the same month. Those three fucking movies all came out in the same month. So it was a big month in movie history, as you can tell. But the parents took the kids, me and my siblings, to see E.T. It was sold out that day. We went to see E.T. and it was sold out. So there were three movies playing. This movie theater was in a town called Hazeldale, Washington, and the theater is no longer there. Many of these theaters are long gone, but there was a theater. Those of you, I know some of you who watch this channel are in Vancouver. The theater was on Highway 99, 99th and 78th Avenue in Hazeldale, Washington. We went to the theater and E.T. was sold out. So the next option was Blade Runner. And I think Blade Runner had just come out that night along with this. I might be wrong about this, but Blade Runner and The Thing came out on the same day, which is crazy to think about. But we went to see Blade Runner. It was sold out. The only option was this. This was the only movie that was not sold out at that time frame that we were there at. So my parents were like, well, I guess we're here. We have to see The Thing. So let's hunker down and watch this thing. No one knew anything about it. We just sat and watched it. I knew who John Carpenter was. I remember at the time, even as a kid, I knew who he was. I loved Escape from New York and Halloween. My parents were none too excited about showing their kids this. I do remember that. But I saw this in the theater, 10 years old. And all I can say, my personal experience with The Thing the first time I saw it was I was fucking blown away, just like anybody. Well, no, I'll get to that conversation in a moment. Not everybody was blown away with this at the time, but my 10-year-old eyes were blown away. I could not believe what I was seeing. Even my parents loved it. It was crazy. It was one of those movies that It was so inventive. It still is. I shouldn't say it was. It still is. But picture this 40 plus years ago watching this in the theater. And it's you have to consider the time this came out too, and I'll talk about that. But this movie was insane. It was the most intense experience I'd ever seen. And ultimately, and I still feel this way about this movie, I felt like the movie worked because it wasn't such a horror movie. It was more of a suspense thriller movie. It was a movie about paranoia. It is a movie about paranoia. It's about isolation. It's about not having anywhere to turn. There's literally nowhere you can run, no one to help. You are doomed. You have no contact with the outside world. You can only trust each other, and you have no trust in each other. So when you stop to consider that, it's a very deep, upsetting concept for a movie. And it blew me away. I didn't know what to do with it, honestly. When I was 10, after the movie rolled, I couldn't wait to see it again. I do remember leaving the theater too, and my parents were like, I can't believe we let you guys just watch that. They were annoyed with themselves, but and it freaked out my siblings for sure. I mean, my brother, he's younger than me. I think he was only 8 or 9 when he saw this. So, yeah, it's no wonder my brother has mental problems now. I shouldn't say that. My brother's fine, and he also loves this movie, but it scared the shit out of him when he was 8. He was even younger than me. But this movie hit me hard the first time I saw it because I was a kid, obviously, and also it was just it was the special effects were so original. Like back during this time, I had seen a little bit of movies with special effects back then, and I had never seen anything like this. And to this day, I still haven't seen anything like this. Just completely original, inventive, creative, real special effects. And there's always that age-old debate about, well, what's better, CGI or real effects? Well, you know what my answer is. I think it comes down to a simple time of when you were raised. If you were raised on CGI, then you prefer that. If you were raised on this, you prefer this. I prefer this for one simple reason. It's more inventive. It forces people to be more creative. If you have a computer, you're cheating. It doesn't look real. Like I mentioned in a video, and I think it was I mentioned this months ago in another video. I think it was Return of the Living Dead. And Roger Ebert mentioned this at some point in his career, but he said that CGI effects look real but feel fake, and old school effects look fake but feel real. And that is extremely true. Like, yeah, of course you know this is fake, but it looks very compelling. It looks a hell of a lot more compelling than newer CGI shit to me. Watching new CGI shit, there's just no humanity to it at all. There is to this. The blood and gore you experience here hits harder than any CGI movie I've ever seen. Now, maybe I'm just being, nostalgic. I know this movie. I've seen it a million times. I grew up on that. I still watch new movies, though. I appreciate CGI. I don't hate it across the board. But seriously, is anybody going to argue the craftsmanship and the artistry of the effects here and they're going to compare it to some new CGI shit? Really? No. I will debate anybody who wants to have that conversation. No. What Rob Bottin does here is fucking amazing. It is unlike any movie ever. And the first time I saw it, I could not believe what I was seeing. I mean, it was frightening. It was really terrifying, but it wasn't the effects. It was just the fact that these guys had nowhere to go. All this shit was happening right in front of their eyes, and where do they go? They have to stand there and deal with it. You don't have anywhere to go. Most humans like to run away from their problems and sweep it under the rug and never deal with it again. But these guys are confronted with it. They have to deal with this if they want to continue living. That is their only option. And so I think that's what disturbs people so much about this movie. Most people don't want to deal with things. There's always an escape route, but not here. You got to stand there and be a man. And as a man, as a male of the species, this movie definitely resonates. And that was another unique thing about this movie, I feel. And it took a hit even back then. I mean, obviously, if it came out today, it would take a huge hit because of all the wokeism that goes on now. But there are no women in this movie. There's not even a trace of a woman. It's all men. But I think that's key because like when there's no woman, there's no posturing. You get men at their most carnal, their most like in their biggest, most bloated survival mode. I think it's key that there are no women in this. It's not a feminist gesture, okay? Feminists cannot get mad at this. That is the story that is being told here. There are no women. It's not being sexist, it's just the story. So it took shit for that back then, and I'm sure it still takes shit for it now. But does it lessen the brilliance of the movie? No, not at all. So if people want to have that boring bullshit side peripheral conversation about no women, then let them waste their time doing it. The rest of us will just sit back and enjoy the brilliance that is this. Another thing, another thing that gave this movie a lot of weight at the time, and they talked about it on the commentary, Russell and Carpenter, which I'm glad they did. I remember I wrote a review for this movie in my school newspaper back in high school, and I mentioned it then in my write up in the paper, and then these guys talked about it later, so it made me feel very legitimate. But the thing you have to understand, this movie came out in 1982 when AIDS was a thing. AIDS was this virus that was killing people, and nobody knew who had it. Nobody knew how you could get it. I mean, people assumed how you could get it. There was no cure for it. When you had it, it was a death sentence. There was no cure. There was no treatment. And again, nobody knew who had it. You could be walking amongst all of us and you'd have no symptoms. So you have to put that into context too. This came out in a time where AIDS was not at all understood. We knew what it was, but we didn't know who among us had it. We weren't sure how you could get it. We weren't sure where it came from. None of that shit was known. So with a movie like this, it upset a lot of people. This movie was not popular when it came out. And I think AIDS was a part of the reason for that. In the early 80s, it was a very dark time for movies anyway, especially in light of E.T. E.T. came out the same month as this. So E.T. was a movie about hope and love, and I'm not bashing on E.T. E.T.'s fine. I like Spielberg movies as much as the next person, but this movie was like the antithesis of E.T. And that was the year of E.T. E.T. ruled the world. It was what everybody saw, it's what everybody loved, it was what everybody wanted. And then this came out. And it flew right in the face of everything that E.T. stood for and everything that Spielberg was doing and everything this fucking siren is doing. Get out of here. Someone just crashed into a telephone pole. Um, Sorry, it's sirens going by. But yeah, it's important to understand this movie in that time frame. You can watch it now and be like, yeah, it's a classic. But when this was new, it did not do well in the theaters. People were freaked out by it. It was way too negative. It did not have a happy ending. It was a very ambiguous ending. The ending it deserved, by the way. Can you imagine this movie having a happy ending? What a bullshit cop out that would be. This ending's perfect. The whole movie is about not knowing who has this thing, and that's the way it ends. And it's obviously John Carpenter directed this, and it was by the way, it was written by Bill Lancaster, Burt Lancaster's son. The only other screenplay he ever wrote was Bad News Bears, which is another one of my favorite movies of all time. A completely different vibe, obviously. Those of you who have ever seen Bad News Bears with Walter Matthau, not that fucking shitty Billy Bob Thornton remake, obviously, but one of my favorite comedies for sure. This is like his only other screenplay, The Thing, and brilliantly written. Obviously, this is based on, the original movie from the 50s, and Carpenter's very open about that. But this is just a totally different movie. And this goes in a long pile of movies that probably couldn't get made today. There's so the list in that category gets higher and higher and higher as we get older and wokeism gets stronger. And this is just one of those movies that couldn't get made today. And I think that's why it's so beloved now. It's just like a relic. You don't see movies like this anymore. You don't see it. But getting back to the finer point of what I love about this movie is I don't really feel this is a horror movie. I mean, obviously it has horror elements. It's terrifying, but it's the best true suspense movie that I've ever seen. I mean, think about that. Like if you not knowing who has this thing, not knowing even yourself if you had it yourself. It's a really frightening thing, and people didn't know what to do with this movie back then. It freaked people out. It did not do well in the theaters. It took a while for this movie to gain traction. And I know I'm kind of all over the place right now. I guess I want to avoid talking about the movie itself because that's been done enough. If you're watching this video, you've already seen this movie, you know what it's about, you know whatever it means to you. So me trying to hammer home what it means to me, I don't think it would seem hollow and empty if I just talked about what the movie means to me. I think it means the same to all of us. Those of us who react to this movie and where it resonates with us the most is its ability to make us feel doomed, to make us feel completely isolated, to have nowhere to turn. And the movie doubles down on that. And in the end, it could have had a happy ending. It could have had a helicopter flying in and saving everybody, but it doesn't do that. That's not the story they're telling. This story is about a bunch of dudes who are fucked from the beginning. And we just watch them scramble around for 2 hours until ultimately they probably die. It's hard to see McCready and Childs surviving at the end of that. But what a perfect ending. Childs and McCready are they basically resign themselves to their own death. And they're just like, well, let's get drunk and warm up our bellies until the fire goes out, and then we'll just freeze to death in the ice. It's probably better that way. It's probably better that if we are the thing, we just freeze. How would they know? I mean, it's an ongoing conversation, right? It never ends. Would they know that they're the thing? If they did, would they want to freeze themselves? Are they that smart? Is the thing that smart? I mean, if it can replicate every cell, it stands to reason you could replicate your brain cells, a human's brain cells, so the thing would know that it's freezing. So it would probably fight to survive, right? Who knows? But then, most of us, if we know we're doomed, how about we just end our dread early and make ourselves freeze in the ice? The thing would know that too. I mean, anyway, the conversation could go on forever. Perfect ending to this movie. But getting back to the popularity of this was not popular at the time. It got panned by critics. People did not like it. I remember them saying that Carpenter is just torturing the audience, and he's a smut peddler. And I remember as a kid, when you're impressionable, you read these reviews and you take it in a little bit. You're like, oh, maybe it is bad. Like, I liked it, but maybe I'm missing something. But as you get older, you start realizing, no, I feel this way about this movie, and no one can change my mind about it. And time has proven that this movie is beloved. Sometimes a movie is just so well made and so well written, you cannot fight it. It's so often where movies are panned or loved in their day, and then time tells the tale. Does it stand the test of time, or doesn't it? There are plenty of movies that were beloved when they first came out, and I think in retrospect, when we watch movies and we'll watch that same movie that was beloved at the time, it turns out, yeah, that's not so good. Or that movie shouldn't have won that award, or this movie shouldn't have beaten out that movie for this award. I mean, consider this: in 1980, Ordinary People beat out Raging Bull for Best Picture. Does that make any sense? No. So, well, no one's worse than that than the Oscars are. I mean, God, I'm getting off the beaten path here, but Crash. Does anyone remember back in 2005 or 2006 that fucking horrible movie Crash? Not the Cronenberg movie. That's a good movie. But that other movie Crash, it just was hitting all the hot button points of the day, and it captured the zeitgeist of the moment. It was the worst movie of all the movies nominated that year, but it won because people are stupid. They have no attention spans, and it was like, oh well, this is what I feel passionate about right now, so I'm voting for this. Have any of you sat through that movie? It's so fucking bad. It's one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. It was terrible then. I mean, I'm talking about movies that were beloved when they came out and then hated more as they went on. That movie was shit from the beginning. I'm trying to remember the movies that was nominated with. It was nominated with like Brokeback Mountain, Munich, Good Night and Good Luck, and Capote, right? I think those were the four movies it was up against. And Crash beat those four movies. All four of those movies were vastly better. But anyway, does anyone even watch the fucking Oscars anymore, by the way? What a joke. I mean, they are worse than ever now. It's embarrassing. It's just embarrassing at this point. But sorry, I got off on a tangent there. That's what my channel's about, ranting and tangents. This movie was not beloved at its time. It took a while. I love this movie from the beginning. I just want to say that. And plenty of us did. I think the people, the mainstream movie reviewers didn't love this movie because it didn't fit into their little linear pathway of what they thought a movie should be in 1982. But this movie was brilliant then. It always was, and it took people a long time to really see its brilliance. You know, that tends to happen with some movies. Zeitgeist change, expectations change, or people just drop those expectations and they just sit back, completely disengaged from the moment a movie was released years later, and they're like, oh, you know what? I was unfairly maligning that movie or album or whatever the piece of art is. This movie was unfairly maligned at its release because it came out during the summer of ET. That's my take. That is my dissertation on why this movie wasn't appreciated at the time of its release. It was ET. It was happy, fun vibes. It was, the little space monkey coming from outer space and making Elliot's life fun, and it had a happy ending and everyone was happy at the end, and that's what the current mores demanded. This flew right in the face of that. So once you're away from that, people are able to appreciate this movie more. So I hope that encapsulates a little bit of my experience with this movie. I love this movie. It makes me feel all warm and fuzzy every time I watch it. It's superbly acted. This is the stuff that we all know about, but Kurt Russell's amazing. John Carpenter's direction is insane. One of my favorite scenes in the movie is when they're all standing at the refrigerator and the blood's gone. And you've got like everyone in the movie, every actor in the movie is standing right there in a very compact space. Everyone has something to say, and John Carpenter is directing it. I would imagine that would be a tough scene to direct. You got a room full of actors all standing within a 10-foot radius, and you've got to direct them all, and you've got to make the audience care and be compelled by it. But he does, man. The way he directs that scene is masterful. And so this is just a rare instance where a movie in the horror genre, where all the elements come together perfectly: the direction, the writing, the casting, the acting, the ambience, and the music, which I'm going to get to. The music's very important with this. In terms of horror and suspense movies, this is a perfect movie. It's one of the few perfect movies. There are movies can be perfect if you push them into a certain ideal, if you push them into a certain genre, they can be perfect. And for what the thing is and how it was delivered, this is a perfect movie. I love this movie. I will never tire of watching it. I watch it at least once or twice a year. I have for the last 40 years. I would easily say I've seen this movie 100 times in my life, maybe more. And I'm not alone. again, this is one of the things that kind of made me hesitate about making this video, is everyone has an opinion about this. So all I can do is offer my experience, and I hope it was unique enough to keep you guys interested for the last 35 minutes. I could talk about this movie forever. I mean, when I think of my favorite scene, I mean, the scenes with the effects are obviously amazing, but my favorite scenes tend to be the ones that don't have the effects, like the scene with the blood. That's a brilliant scene, man. Just looking at their face and they're staring at each other, and like like when Childs gets tested and they find out he's not the thing, and he starts looking at the guy next to him like, get me out of here, come and lose, come on. I mean, it seems like that. You're looking at their facial expressions like that. Yes, that is exactly what you'd do. You know, it's horrifying but funny at the same time. Man, it's hard to pull that off in a horror movie, especially, and Carpenter does. Amidst all the great movies that John Carpenter has directed, I mean, think about that. Escape from New York, The Fog, Christine. Christine, I think Christine is a vastly underrated movie. Or maybe it's not, I don't know. I think Christine's one of his best. They Live. You know, we know what John Carpenter's capable of. But this is his best movie. It just is. It just is. Sometimes everyone gets it right. And this is a moment where everyone has it right. This is John Carpenter's finest moment. This is Kurt Russell's famous best moment. Um, famous moment, whatever. It's his best moment. And those of you who have seen Hateful Eight, by the way, when I saw Hateful Eight, I was so excited because Tarantino was using music cues from Ennio Morricone, and it was about a bunch of people locked in a snowy, isolated hut, and it was like Tarantino's just remaking The Thing. It's like a Western version of The Thing. That's what this is. And it makes sense because John Carpenter, he was always a Western fan. He loves Western movies. When you watch Carpenter's movies, all of his movies kind of come from Westerns. They just do. They're in that horror suspense genre, but you can tell he loves his Westerns. I mean, look at Escape from New York. You don't get more Western than that movie. You know, Kurt Russell in Big Trouble in Little China. His whole character is like a John Wayne impression. Escape from New York. Kurt Russell is imitating Clint Eastwood the whole movie. He has Lee Van Cleef in the movie. He's acting in the movie. So John Carpenter loves his westerns, man. And to see Tarantino flip it, to take this and do a western version of that with Morricone's Thing music, like some of those music cues you hear in Hateful Eight, that's from The Thing. Music that didn't get used in the movie. Morricone had music that was not used, and I'll get to that in a minute. But Tarantino took that unused music and used it in Hateful Eight. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go watch those movies, listen to the soundtracks, and you'll see what I mean. But when I saw the Hateful Eight in the theater, by the end of it, I was like, that was The Thing with cowboy hats. That's all that was. You know, you got a bunch of people in there who don't know who to trust. They're all locked in there in a snowstorm. Come on, The Thing. And by the way, what a great movie Hateful Eight is, man. I love Tarantino, but Hateful Eight, what a great movie. Love that movie. The way it's shot and the acting, got Sam Jackson, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Walton Goggins, and everybody, Kurt Russell, everybody in that movie is so good. I love that movie, and it all comes from this. I've never heard Tarantino talk about it. Has anyone actually heard him talk about the through line with Hateful Eight and The Thing? I mean, most of his movies are always, influenced by something. I mean, most of his movies he's just rewriting other genres anyway. Not that that's a bad thing. I love that. But to me, Hateful Eight is his movie where he most bases his entire story and setup on another movie, The Thing. Do I am I clear about this, by the way, how much I love this movie? All right. So, we're talking about the music now, because that's what I do on this channel. I talk about music. Let me pull this out of its sleeve. This is another reason why this movie is amazing. This The Thing soundtrack by the master, Ennio Morricone. You might say he's the greatest film composer, music composer of all time. I would counter that with saying he's just one of the finest composers ever, period. Music or otherwise. Ennio Morricone, this man right here, one of the most talented music composers in history. I'm putting him up there amongst the best. And this is one of his best. Absolutely. Again, what I just said about the Westerns, this is what Morricone is mainly known for, are Westerns, but he did all kinds of soundtracks. He didn't just do Westerns. And this is a really exciting soundtrack for him because it's very electronic. In fact, I would argue this is his most electronic soundtrack. You don't hear a lot of strings on this. He's mainly known for a lot of his string work when it comes to soundtracks, and he does do that here. But Carpenter didn't use that so much in the movie. You do find the unused music here. I'm trying to remember. I can't remember the song he doesn't use. Is it Bestiality? It's that track that goes bum 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 bum. That's the song Carpenter did not use here in this movie, but Tarantino used in Hateful Eight. When I heard that, I was like, people who saw The Thing and didn't hear this wouldn't know any different. But I've listened to this for years now. I heard that song. I was like, oh my God, he's using that song. This is just the original U.S. pressing of the soundtrack on MCA Records. This is one of the very first records I ever bought with my own money. I had a paper route back when I was 10 years old, and this is one of the very first records I ever bought. This is the record I bought at the record store. This is it. If anyone's wondering the oldest record I have in my collection, this could very well be it. In terms of records that I bought myself, new. Here, as always, I'll show you the labels. Just those of you who bought records on MCA back in the 80s, this is what all of their labels look like. This is just the generic MCA label. Came with a boring ass paper inner sleeve. But I think if you're a Thing fan, this is an absolute must-have. As indeed the case for any Ennio Morricone soundtrack. I have many, many records from this man right here. And do I need to introduce him? Do I need to tell you? I'll give you one. I'll give you the obvious one. He did the music for The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Need I say more? Okay, I'll give you a few more. He did the music for The Untouchables. Brian De Palma's beautiful Untouchables movie, written by David Mamet. A great movie and brilliant music. Look into this guy if you don't know him. He's one of those guys that you've heard, you just don't know if you don't know him. You know who he is. But absolutely essential if you like this movie. Pick this up, man. And I've seen this has been reissued a number of times. I almost picked it up. I can't remember. Was it Mondo that put it out? I don't buy records on Mondo. I don't like them. I think their presses are shit. They put out this big elaborate new cover and colored vinyl and all kinds of goodies with it. I didn't pick it up because I have this. Why would I want that when I have this? I do like collecting physical stuff, but I don't like that label. I try to avoid them, and I have a hard time believing it would sound any better than this. And also, they wanted like $100 for it. Like, no, I'm not giving you $100 for music I already have for a record that's on blue and white wax, you know. Get over yourselves, Mondo Records. You're not that cool. I think I paid $2 for this new 40 years ago, or 42, whatever it was. So, yeah, I'll stick with this one. But you should definitely, if you're into the music and you're looking for a copy of the soundtrack, this is the one you want. Don't bother with any reissue. Just go find the original US one. This actually sounds good. It still sounds, it's a quality pressing. All pressings were quality back then. It's not like now where you kind of cross your fingers and hold your breath every time you pull a record out of its cellophane and wonder if it's going to sound good. Back then, everything sounded good. You didn't have to worry about it. Everything was pressed with extreme quality. Even records you bought for $2. And I'm going to show this. My brother got this for me for Christmas several years ago. I just thought I'd show this. This is a big, thick hardcover book showing artwork created by fans of the movie. And I thought it was cool. A lot of it is kind of mediocre and dumb, and a lot of it is brilliant. You get fan made thing pictures, and I really like this one. I thought this. I don't think any art that I've ever seen surpasses that original image of the glowing face. I think that's brilliant. Um, Let me find. Well, I'll just show you a couple that I like. I kind of thought these two were cool. I'll show you some that I like and some that I don't like. This one I thought was kind of cool, interesting. Let's see, and then just random images for our love of Kurt Russell, aka R.P. McCready. Um, Fan art, you know. I thought it was a nice companion piece to the movie. Um, and obviously, you're not going to have like this one. Not they all can't be winners. I thought this one was kind of cheeseball. This one's like reminds me of one of those corny, cheesy wolf shirts that you buy at Walmart or something. So yeah, you can't have winners in all of them. But I guess the ones I kind of like this one. This one of Clark. He's probably got dog blood all over his hands. This one's kind of interesting, like a childlike. I kind of like this one. It's really disturbing. It's painted like a kid picture, but look at the dog. Dog is clearly getting ready to eat this kid. Thought that was kind of interesting. Um, Thought these were kind of cool. I mean, one of the coolest beasts ever created. What is Rob Bottin doing nowadays? Because he was young when he did this. He was like, I think 20 years old when he worked on the thing. So he must be in his 60s now. He's not that old. I love this one of Childs right before the right before the fire goes out, enjoying his last drink, not knowing if he's the thing or not. Anyway, I thought this was a very fun book to have. This one's kind of cool. Not quite sure what that's from. It's just a cool picture in its own right. So anyway, pick this up if you like the thing. I highly recommend it. And pick this up while you're at it if you don't have this. And you already have this in one of its forms. One of the greatest movies ever made. Not just the greatest horror movie or the greatest suspense or thriller movie, just one of the greatest movies, period, ever made. The Thing, John Carpenter. Thank you very much, John Carpenter, for bringing this to us, making our lives better, making the world a better place with your art. The Thing. All right, I'm going to shut up now. I'm going to go enjoy my isolation as long as this ice storm stops. In fact, maybe I'll watch this. I haven't watched this in a while. Maybe I'll do that. It's a perfect time. I'm feeling isolated. I'm feeling shut in. The cabin fever is creeping in. Who do I trust? I don't know. Can I trust anybody? I'll try.